last is the packet of stapled papers. These are all the 5 policies. It is pretty thick. You can follow along if you choose to do so. Take notes, write down any questions you have so that we can address those at the end, but we're not going to go through this step by step, and this is yours to keep. Yes. Okay. All right. Now, for the sake of time, we've got some policies at the end that I think you guys will want to spend a little more time on. We are going to blow through these first in the beginning pretty quick and just hit the high points. So again, I encourage you to read through the policy yourself because we're not going to touch on every single thing. All right, so approved by our board of directors on August 27th, we had a revision to our non-grids drivers. We have a new code of ethics and business conduct policy. We have a revision to our previous whistleblower policy. We have a revision to our dress code and a revision to our attendance policy. So our non-grids drivers, that's going to be effective on 10/1 of 18. So you've got about a week and a half to review the policy and make sure that you are in compliance, ask any questions that you have. This is going to cover all employees, volunteers, anyone who drives for Wendell Foster, whether it's a Wendell Foster vehicle or your personal vehicle. So what's staying the same? The driver requirements are staying the same. Training requirements are staying the same, standards of conduct. So pretty standard to the old policy that was rolled out earlier this year, you may or may not have been aware of. So what's changing? Driver selection. What we have on here is that we are going to be running a motor vehicle record check on all employees before hire to make sure that your driving record is sufficient to be able to drive one of the Foster vehicles or for business. And then annually, we're going to get an updated MVR for all employees who drive for Wendell Foster. You are prohibited to operate one of our vehicles if you have any of these things on your record. So not having a valid license or driving on a suspended or revoked, a DUI, hit and run, reckless driving, manslaughter, homicide, or fleeing the scene of an accident. So this is within the next 12 months if you have any of these things. If you have it on your record right now, come and see me personally and we can discuss it. We don't want to penalize anyone who's currently employed who has these. We can grandfather you in, work on that. But understand if you get any of these things going forward, then you'll not be able to drive under Wendell Foster under our umbrella. And that a lot of that has to do with our liability insurance, and they have requirements on who drives and what standards they need to meet. If you have a speeding violation 15 or more, we will allow you to still drive, but there is an extra step that you have to go through. There's an online driving education course. It's about 30 minutes. It's on the computer. We will pay for you to take that training. We will also pay you for your time. So it's just one extra step so that we can show the insurance that we're mitigating our risk. All right, accidents, crashes, we just have that defined in the policy. So basically anything that could involve personal injury, property damage, collision, no matter how slight, regardless of fault, that's considered an accident or a crash and it needs to be reported within 24 hours to transportation. There's a vehicle accident report that we have generated. These are going to be kept, I believe, probably the glove box of all of our Wendell Foster vehicles. So if you get into an accident, you can pull one out and complete it, get it turned into transportation. There's binders, okay. If it is your personal vehicle, you of course will not have one of these blank forms, but you will need to contact us, come up here, and then BJ or myself can give you a blank form for you to complete within that 24-hour period. All right, Code of Ethics. That's going to be effective on 10/1. The new Code of Ethics policy is going to replace Policy F3 regarding conduct and Policy F27 regarding tips and gifts. It's going to encompass those things. And this is going to apply to basically anyone that's here at Wendell Foster, whether you are employed, a contractor, a visitor, volunteer, service recipient, anyone and everyone is going to be covered under this Code of Ethics policy. And the purpose is basically to promote honest and ethical conduct, that we can say what our standards of conduct are, and that anyone who doesn't abide by those will have to have a discussion with you. So the tenets of this policy, and again, I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail because there's paragraphs in that policy regarding each of these, but the things we're going to look at is trust, integrity, respect, environment, health, and safety, quality, respecting diversity and equal opportunity employment practices, avoiding conflicts of interest, protecting our assets and information, bribes and kickbacks, and gifts and entertainment. So those things are in the policy. You can read in more detail as to what that means. This basically, in a nutshell, is going to outline what acceptable, for example, gifts and entertainment is. So is it acceptable to maybe take a baked good from a guardian who wants to thank you for your service? that would be acceptable. Is it acceptable to, receive a full paid trip to Hawaii for a week? That's not acceptable. So it kind of outlines what's acceptable behavior and tips and gives them what's not. All right, expectations. The expectations are that all employees are responsible for knowing and following the values of the code. And then if you have any questions, we ask that you ask those. If you have any concerns that anyone's violating, we do ask that you raise those. It's your responsibility to report violations, or if you believe that there's a good faith concern. So not that you know 100% that there was a violation, but you really think in good faith that there is a concern, you report those, we will investigate it. You can report it to myself, or you can report it to Integrity Counts, which is a whistleblower company, which we will go over in just a few minutes. All right, we'll go over it now. So again, this is going to apply to everyone here at Wendell Foster, whether you're an employee, a contractor, a service recipient, a guardian, etc. And so the purpose of the whistleblower policy is if you don't feel comfortable reporting any good faith violations to myself or to your supervisor, then you can do that through the anonymous hotline that we have. You can go online, you can call the number, you can fax the complaint in, and then we will investigate that anonymously. So this is a way for any employee who does not feel comfortable reporting it and you being known and would choose to do so anonymously, this is an avenue for you to do so. All right, so this is going to cover serious concerns outlined in our Code of Business Conduct and Ethics, and also some examples here. Serious concerns would be conflicts of interest, criminal activity, financial reporting, fraud and embezzlement, harassment or discrimination, HIPAA or privacy, substance abuse, abuse and neglect, improper conduct, and then workplace health and safety. So a variety of different things. If you see that it needs to be addressed, we do ask that you report it to me, call the number. Serious, regular business concerns wouldn't be reported through this avenue. So if you have a concern about a staffing or a situation like that that doesn't break any of our policies, it's just a concern that you have, then we do ask that you don't need to be anonymous. You just come and go through the regular service matters, the regular conduct of reporting those through the proper channels. All right, reporting. So we have the toll-free number here. We have the email, the website, and then the fax. So that information is in several places for you to have, whether you're here at work or you're at home and you want to report something. So again, you have the wallet cards. In the policy, the whistleblower policy, all this contact information is laid out, which you have now. And then we also have copies, little posters with this information over by the time clock in the Elmer building and then here in the Young building where things are posted right across the hall here. So you have several different avenues at which you have this information available to you. And then the policy also outlines confidentiality and being anonymous, what the complaint process is, malicious or false allegations, and then what your protection is as somebody who has whistleblown. All right, we're going to move on to dress code. Dress code is effective 10/1, so you have about a week and a half. I know you've all heard about dress code already, so we're going to go over that in a little more detail. This is not a huge change from what the current dress code is. There's just some things that are not being enforced that are going to be enforced, and we've added a couple of things to it. So the purpose is just to identify guidelines for employees and what they should wear so that you can be comfortable and safe while we maintain a professional environment here. We do expect all of our employees to present themselves in a modest, clean, and appropriate manner. And then if you have community interaction, if you're out in the community, we do ask that you dress in a respectful manner that would not bring reproach upon the organization. I'm not sure about you, but I have been out in the community and I have seen people that are with some of our service recipients, and I've been embarrassed by the way that they were dressed. So if you're out in the community and you are representing Wendell Foster, in general, you need to be aware that you are and dress in an appropriate manner. All right, shirts and dresses. We'll go through this pretty quick. So acceptable shirts includes, but is not limited to, dress blouses or shirts, collared or golf shirts, sweaters, cardigans, dress jackets, t-shirts, sweatshirts. Most all shirts are included in this. The only thing you need to be aware of is that tops are too short, that expose your breast or your midriff are not acceptable. So be aware of that, which I believe is in the current policy. Sleeveless shirts are allowed, however, tank tops, spaghetti straps, shirts, or dresses are not appropriate. And then if you do decide to wear a dress, make sure that it is not more than 3 inches above the knee in general. However, we will allow them if they are more than 3 inches. We're going to ask that you use your best judgment because we do understand that different body types are different, and what 3 inches looks like on one person is completely different than another person. So just use your best judgment in those situations. All right, bottoms. Dress slacks, khakis, corduroys, denim, exercise wear, pretty open there as well. Must be appropriate for the workplace. Can't have large holes, excessive or large holes. Don't drag the floor, excessive fray. Make sure that no undergarments are showing. Leggings, yoga pants, or similar type pants are permitted only if worn with a top long enough to cover the front and the rear of an employee. This is our current policy. It's maybe not enforced all the time, but it is currently in our policy. I don't have to ask you, but I assume that you've probably seen leggings not worn appropriately here on campus. So we need to make sure that we're covered up. I think we can probably all agree that not everyone looks the same in leggings. Some people look a lot better in leggings than others. And so due to that, we want to make sure that everything is completely covered so that we look appropriate. And then the 3-inch rule again for shorts or skirts. Again, use your best judgment with that. The other big change that we have here, which is actually in our current policy, but it's not enforced, is that athletic, track, or similar type shorts are not permitted, and this does include basketball shorts. I've heard from a lot of employees, I know a lot of night shift employees will wear those. I'm talking with our committee that created this to discuss what guidelines we want to put around this and if we can allow it. So currently it's not allowed, effective 10/1, but I am working on this because I know that a lot of people on night shift and to be comfortable do wear those. Now do understand this is our dress code in general, but dress for the occasion. If we're having a water day, of course it's acceptable for you to wear shorts, any of those things. Just make sure that wherever you're at, you're dressed appropriate for whatever the event or situation is. All right, so let's talk leggings. Shirts must be long enough to cover the front and the back. A good way to judge is when you're getting dressed, put your shirt on first with no leggings. If your body isn't completely covered by that shirt front and back, you should not wear it with leggings. Okay? Does everybody understand that? All right, so I've got some pictures here so we can play a little game. Is this appropriate? Under the new policy, that would be no. What about the second picture? Is this appropriate? Yes, it is. Her shirt is pulled up on the side, tucked into her waistband, but if it was pulled out, then it would be appropriate. It covers everything. What about Rihanna? Is Rihanna appropriate here?
Yeah.
Here, is she appropriate? Yes. What about here, the tunic with the leggings? Is that appropriate? Yeah, it covers everything. What about this? She looks really cute. No, it's not appropriate, unfortunately. If her shirt was a little longer, she'd be in good shape. And then here. Okay, so we're all on the same page. We all understand leggings are allowed. I wore leggings yesterday when I presented this 3 times. I'm pro leggings. I wear them every day at home. I think probably all of you do too. Just make sure that you're wearing them in good fashion when you're here at work. All right, shoes. So accessible shoes, dress shoes, heels, boat shoes, sandals, boots, athletic shoes, tennis shoes. Pretty open here as to what you can wear. Shoes are to be worn at all times. House shoes or slippers are not permitted. And then rubber flip-flops are not permitted. So like the $2, $3 Old Navy rubber flip-flops, those aren't allowed, but you can wear dressier sandals if you're not in a direct care position. If you are in direct care, you can't wear open-toed or flip-flops because you're around a lot of wheels, and we want to make sure that your toes are safe. And then undergarments are to be worn at all times. Hats have to be appropriate for the workplace. All attire is to be free from obscenities or symbols of drug, alcohol, sexual implications, anything offensive, pretty standard stuff. And then tattoos, we are fine with tattoos, but if you have any exposed tattoos that are offensive, drug, alcohol, sexual implications, anything offensive, we just ask that you cover those up. Sunglasses are not to be worn on your face in the building, you can't have them on your head. And then only appropriate one-piece swimwear is allowed while swimming. I say one piece, however, a 2-piece tankini that completely covers your top and your bottom and it doesn't expose any of your midriff, that is acceptable as long as it does cover everything. All right, the other big change that we have here is business casual is expected in situations where you are in meetings with outside vendors. So some examples that are included here, but it's not limited to this. So board or committee meetings, meetings with outside vendors, clients, customers. This does include guardians, if you schedule a guardian meeting. If you are conducting a presentation, attending a presentation, and I don't mean in services here, I'm talking about if we were to send you to a conference somewhere, you would want to dress appropriately for the conference that you're at. If everyone is in suits and ties and dresses, you probably don't want to wear leggings with a t-shirt long enough. Interviews, etc. So just make sure that you're dressed appropriately for whatever business action you're taking that day. All times use your best judgment. If you have any questions, you can ask your supervisor. You're welcome to come and see me and I can let you know if it's a good thing or a bad thing to wear. The general rule of thumb that I always go with is that if I pull it out of my closet and have a question if it's appropriate, it's probably not. So if you have a question about it, probably use your best judgment there and say, no, it's not appropriate. attendance. How many of you have already heard that I'm a terrible person with this new attendance policy? Thanks, Wes.
You're welcome.
We have a new attendance policy, so I want to lay some ground rules here regarding our attendance policy and let you know how this came about. So our attendance policy came about because we had some gaps in our old policy. So we have a committee of supervisors, we have some employees that are involved in it that wanted to go over what is an acceptable attendance policy, and we created this together, and it was approved by our leadership team and our board of directors. It is fairly different from our current policy. Some of the things are the same. Some of the things in here are more restrictive, you're not gonna like, I do understand. And some of the things in here are actually less restrictive than our old policy. So understand that this is the new policy, but as long as you have good attendance and you follow this, you shouldn't be reprimanded and you shouldn't fall under most of these disciplines in here, okay? Again, so I understand you might not like it, but do understand if you follow the policy, there's nothing to worry about. All right, so the policy is going to apply to all Wendell Foster employees. And the purpose is just to establish uniform guidelines to ensure a consistent and fair approach to solving any attendance issues. So we want to make sure that we are fairly and consistently applying this across our organization and across all departments and shifts. All right, so we have some definitions to go over. So the first is an incident. An incident is an occurrence, it's a call-in, it's any unplanned absence for the entirety of your shift or after a tardy period has expired, which we will discuss. So it's failure for you to report to work. This applies to regular shifts. This applies for extra shifts, overtime if you picked that up, and then work-related meetings. So it does include these in-services, okay? And the reason why we had to put in-services in there is because while policy information is good for you to know, it's not a requirement. Some of the information, like what Kim is going to go over later, is state-regulated information that we have to make sure that you go through annually. And so we have to make sure that you're here, that you receive that information, and that you're in compliance with the state regs so that we don't receive any deficiencies on those. And a tardy and leave early is basically an unscheduled tardy, so coming in late, or if you leave early before the designated period here. Excused absence. This is when someone is scheduling PTO, the supervisor has approved it, you're going to be off of work. So it's a normal scheduled day, but you want to take a week off to go to Florida on fall break. Your supervisor's already approved that, you're not expected to be here, you're taking PTO, there's no occurrence for this. So this is just generally like you did before, scheduling PTO. And then no call, no show. Employees must report when you're to report that you will be absent. If you do not report, it's considered a no call, no show, and that's a voluntary resignation from your position with Wendell Foster. So employees are expected to report to work for every scheduled shift and clock in at your regularly scheduled start time. Employees are responsible for punching their own time cards. Buddy punching is considered falsification of time card, falsification of documents. If you assist in that or you do that, that could lead up to termination because that's stealing time. So please be aware that that is a very serious offense, that's stealing from the organization. And then in the event of a state of emergency, Eric Sharp, our CEO, is going to make a decision on how to handle those absences. And it's going to be a case-by-case basis because state of emergency is called for various things. We just had it a couple of months ago for the water. We have it for weather, various things. So we're not going to have a blanket policy. It's going to be case-by-case basis on how we treat those absences depending on the severity of the state of emergency. All right, unplanned absence. So when you are away from work for any reason, that's going to count as one incident, one occurrence, 1 point. However you want to look at it, we're calling it incidents, that's 1. If you are in a direct care position, we do require that you notify your supervisor as soon as possible, but at least 4 hours prior to the start of your shift. I know currently it's 2 hours, we're moving that to 4 hours. We have a lot of feedback from some of our managers and from some of our staff members who we consulted in this new policy. And essentially what came out of it was 2 hours was not enough time to get a replacement. I don't know if you've ever been called in, but you want as much time as possible so that you can take care of your affairs. You usually can't drop everything and come into work to cover a call in. And so for that reason, if you're in a direct care, we do ask for 4 hours notice with that. With that being said, I understand that you can't always give 4 hours notice. Maybe you're going to get in your car to come to work and you try to start it and your car won't start. And you can't help that. You didn't know 4 hours ago that wasn't going to happen. We understand that. So in general, the rule is 4 hours. The only repercussion would be that you get a late call-in. After 4 late call-ins, you're not eligible for any annual increases that we may have. Not stating that we will in fact have one, but if you do this more than 4 times, you're not eligible for that. So you have 4 times in a year to be able to call in after the 4-hour period. Because again, we understand life happens. Wendell Foster is not your entire life, that you have a life and priorities outside of here. But we want to make sure that we are courteous to our service recipients and also to the fellow staff that we're calling in to cover to give sufficient notice for them. All right, if you do call in, you cannot report to another employee. That is not sufficient. It could be considered a no-call, no-show. So make sure you go through the proper avenues of that. If you are off for 2 consecutive days or shifts, you will receive 1 incident only if a doctor's note is supplied. So the current policy says 2 shifts or less, it automatically counts as 1. Now we're going to, if you are sick and you bring a doctor's note, we will count it as 1 absence. Okay? You are not required to submit the doctor's note, but understand if you don't submit the doctor's note, it's going to count as 2 separate incidents. With that, do any of you have Teladoc through our insurance in here? Teladoc? So Teladoc, you can call, you can video chat. I believe there's no copay actually for Teladoc, which is crazy for Telemed. There's usually your regular copay like you would pay anywhere else. You can call them, have them see you. They will email you a doctor's note. So it's not going to be difficult for you to get a doctor's note. It's actually going to be fairly easy for you to do. But make sure that you have a doctor's note if you want it to count as 1. A doctor's note must be supplied if you're out 3 or more days, if it's for a medical reason. And that's because we want to make sure that you are fit for duty, that you are able to come back to work, that you yourself are not going to get hurt here, and that you really should be here, because some people push through and they come in even when they shouldn't, and we appreciate that, but we want to make sure that you're okay to be here. And then if you're contagious too, that no one gets infected by anything that you may have. If you do bring a doctor's note, we do ask that it has some of these things on here, which is pretty common, so employee's name. You also can bring a doctor's note for your immediate family, anyone who resides in your house. So if you have sick kids, you can bring a doctor's note for that. Make sure that you put what your name is though, because it's only going to have your child's name, and I don't know your child's name. So make sure your name is written on there, guardian of or parent of. Your provider's name and contact information, this is generally on all doctor's notes. Dates and times in question are excused. So here, what it comes down to is if you go to the doctor for, you're sick on 9/21 and 9/22, we'll say. You go to the doctor on 9/21, they need to write on there, seen on 9/21, can return 9/23, or seen 9/21, excuse 9/21 and 9/22, return 9/23. So they need to designate on there which days. If you call in on 9/21 and 9/22, you get a doctor's note and it says excuse 9/21, can return on 9/22, and you don't, that's not going to cover it because the doctor said you weren't sick and you should have been here at work. With that being said, if you're still sick the next day, you can usually call your doctor and say, hey, I'm not better, can you extend my doctor's note? They'll give you a second one, and that's no problem, they'll count as 1. Okay? All right, and then if you're out for 4 or more consecutive scheduled work days, this is going to be FMLA. We want you to contact HR, and we'll talk to you about what the FMLA process is, and that's separate from our attendance policy. If you are a no-call, no-show, this means that you fail to report your absence within 4 hours of the beginning of your shift. This is considered a voluntary resignation from your position. However, we do understand that extenuating circumstances happen. Sometimes you're in a car wreck and you're dealing with that and you don't have the time to call. I would say that's an extenuating circumstance. Forgetting to call would not be an extenuating circumstance. So just understand we do know life happens, and we're going to work with you on this, but try to call if at all possible. All right, so tardy is clocking in more than 7 minutes late and less than a quarter of the way through your shift, and that's going to be a half an occurrence or half an incident. So if you're a 12-hour shift employee, that would be 7 minutes through 3 hours. In that time period, if you come in late, that's a tardy, that's only half an occurrence. Anything after 3 would be a full incident or occurrence. So that means if you come in at 6:30, you have from 6:30 to 6:37 to clock in to get to your workstation and begin. After 6:37, the time clock actually rolls up, and you would be paid for that time. And so that's why we're on the 7-minute rule, is because it's all based on what the clock does and how it pays you. 8-hour shift would be 2 hours. Leaving more than 7 minutes early will result in a half a tardy leave occurrence there. So leaving early from your shift more than 7 minutes. With that being said, we understand that sometimes you finish your job, your relief is already here, and your supervisor says you can go. That's not going to count against you. That means there's no work, we're going ahead and sending you home, you're welcome to go. That does not count. Our payroll will work with our supervisors on reconciling our timesheets to make sure they see 2 people clocked out early, though they're going to assume those are excused unless they hear otherwise from those supervisors. Okay? If you are sent home, if you come to work sick and you're sent home, that's not gonna count against you either. You're not medically well enough to be here, we're making the decision as Wendell Foster for you to be sent home, that's not gonna count either. With that being said, do not come to work sick and infectious. We ask that you call in, go through the normal channels of that to make sure that everyone is safe. And then if you're gonna be tardy, notify your supervisor as soon as possible. All right, disciplinary action. So this is on a rolling 12-month period. So previously, the policy had your disciplines were on there for 12 months, but your incidents, your occurrences, your points, they rolled off after 90 days. That is changing. Everything is on a 12-month rolling calendar year basis now. So this is all similar to what we currently have. So to be issued at 4 incidents is a documented counseling, a written warning at 5, final at 6, and then a termination at 7. So those numbers have not changed. That's what we currently do. It's just going to stay on there for 12 months instead of rolling off after 90 days. Okay? So I've got some examples here to go through. So John Doe has 0 attendance incidents. John calls in on 10/1 of 18. He's going to get 1 incident, 1 point, so that means he only has 1 on his record. There's no discipline to be done, and then the incident is going to be active for the 12-month period. John calls in on 10/15. He's going to get another point. That means he now has 2 points, no discipline. Incident is active for 12 months. John calls in on 11/1. Receives 1 point, 1 incident, total of 3 incidents. No discipline at this time, it's going to be active for 12 months. So you can see, aside from your regular PTO scheduling that you have, you can miss up to 3 shifts, and then technically it could be more than that if you missed 2 and you brought the doctor's note before any conversation is had. So this goes back to, we understand life happens, we're not expecting perfect attendance, but we do have to rein in some of the attendance issues that we've had. All right, John calls in on 11/15. He's going to get another incident, so that means he now has 4, and this is going to trigger the documented counseling, should be issued the next shift on 11/16. So the incidents is active for 12 months, and then the discipline itself is also on the record for 12 months. All right, so John now has 4 incidents, 4 points. He got the documented counseling on 11/16. John does not miss any more days until 9/1 of 19, so almost a full year later. What is his discipline? Does anybody know? It'll be a written warning. He has 5 incidents at that point that are active, and he already had the documented counseling in the last 12 months. So he had both of those things that triggered the next step of the process. All right, so let's go to the next one. So he has 5 on his record. He has the 2 disciplines, the documented counseling and the written warning. He calls in on 10/6 of 19. What is his discipline? No? There is no discipline. Okay? 10/1 of 18 rolled off. 10/6 of 19 is added on, so that totals 5, which would be a written warning, but John already received that on 9/2. Okay? So our current policy says if you miss 4, you get a documented counseling, and everyone after that, even if they rolled off, it continues and adds on to the attendance. So it could be a situation where everything's rolled off, you corrected your behavior, you miss 1 more, and then it's going to trigger the next step. That's not the case with our new policy. It's actually a little more lenient in that way, that you have to have the correct number of absences on your record as well as the correct level of discipline to progress to the next step. Okay? All right, so what does this mean for your current attendance record? So effective tomorrow, 9/21, all previous absences and all previous disciplines are cleared from your record. We're completely clearing those off. Everybody has a clean slate, okay? With that, the updated policy is going to dictate the new expectations. So we've sat here, we've discussed what the new policy is, what your new expectations are, and the repercussions of not meeting those. So we're all on the same playing field now. All right, any questions about our policies, procedures before we move on to upcoming dates? No questions? Okay, if you think of questions later, feel free to write them down. You can call, you can come and see me, you can email me, and I'll be happy to answer any of those after you review the policy and consider what some of the loopholes may be. Okay? Make sure that you print, sign, and date our policy acknowledgement and just put that in the center of the table. Go ahead and work on that for me. And then we're going to go over some upcoming dates real quick before I hand it over to Ken. So September the 26th, so next Wednesday, we will have Chick-fil-A here to continue our Employee Appreciation Month from 6 to 8:30, so this will cover both night shift and day shift. So we'll have Chick-fil-A sandwiches, fruit, drinks here for you, so come by for that. October 17th and 18th is our biometric screenings. This is our finger prick that you get with your wellness credits. We have the health part coming. They'll be here in the Young building. They're going to do a finger prick. They're going to do weight, BMI, waist circumference, I believe, several different things. We have 5 criteria for employees to meet, and if you're within normal limits of those 5, then you can get $10 for each credit. So essentially up to $50 off your medical premiums per month. And that's for 2019. So we still have signups coming out later this week. Should be tomorrow. I have signups. You'll want to do those. They're coming here those dates to do that. And if you participate, you are put into a drawing for $50 Visa gift cards. So just be aware of that. Even if you are not part of our insurance, you can still come and we will pay for you to take part in that screening. The 18th, so the second day of the biometric screenings being here, is our health fair. We have a lot of different vendors and door prizes that are coming. We've got some samples. We're hoping to have some healthy food trucks here. I've got chair massages, 5-minute chair massages set up to come, so we've got a variety of different things. We're gonna have yoga and sensory park. Feel free to come, wear your leggings. That'll be on October the 18th, properly. October 19th through the 15th, you can still take part in the biometric screening, even if you're not able to come those 2 days that the health park is here. What you'll want to do is come to HR. We have an authorization form that we will complete, and you have from October 19th to December 15th to go yourself to the health park and get that screening done, and then you will receive the credits for 2019 based off what your limits are. So even if you're not able to make it those 2 days, we still have an 8-week period that you can do that. After December 15th, you're not eligible to take that screening for 2019 credits any longer, okay? November 14th and 15th, we have health insurance open enrollment. So we'll have our in-service that'll go over what our plan is for the following year. And then November 19th and 20th, we have open enrollment beginning. That is the Monday and Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We will have representatives here from benefit enrollment to assist you in enrolling or changing. You are only required to come for open enrollment if you need to make changes. So if you need to add, you need to alter, you need to drop, any of those things, make changes to your coverage, or you are a newly hired employee in 2018. There are benefits that are offered only at open enrollment, and so anyone hired in 2018 was not offered those yet, okay? So if you don't fall in those 2 guidelines, you don't even have to come. It's a passive enrollment. We're going to consider you good to go and just roll over your enrollment to the next year. All right, any questions? All right, thank you guys. Make sure that you print, sign, and date your acknowledgement and put it in the middle of your table. We'll pick it up later.
Purpose of infection control program? Huh? Come on now. There you go. So we don't spread infections throughout the facility, right? Prevent the spread of contagious processes in the facility. What's the number one thing you can do to prevent the spread of infection? Wash your hands. Wash your hands. What's the number one thing you must remember about washing your hands here at Wendell Foster? What's the last thing you gotta do? With what? With paper towel. You don't use your hands, right? When should you wash your hands? Basically, anytime you feel your hands are dirty, right? Personal protective equipment. What's the number one thing you utilize here at Wendell Foster? Gloves. But what else do we have? And when should you use your personal protective equipment? Anytime there's a possibility you're going to be exposed to someone's body fluids, right? All of these things. I mean, all of these involve body fluids, right? An exposure incident. What is an exposure incident? That's any time you're exposed to someone's body fluids. What's the most common way in the healthcare setting? Tell me one. A needle stick. Absolutely. What else? A bite. There you go. Excellent. We're going to talk a little bit about hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is a bloodborne pathogen. This organism works to destroy your liver, Your liver's an essential organ for life, gotta have one, part one, right? It does a lot of things. It filters out your blood, it provides clotting factors so you don't bleed to death, if you cut yourself, vitamins and all kinds of stuff, right? Symptoms of hepatitis B are all ugly, right? That's them right there. There's many ugly. Is there a cure for hepatitis B once you've got it? No. But guess what there is? A vaccine. So if any of you have not had the vaccine, come and see me. So how do you get hepatitis? The most common way in the healthcare setting, tell me what it was again? Needle sticks, right? Blood. Is that the only place you can get hepatitis B? No. Out in the community, unprotected sex, sharing of drug needles. Wes?
Thanks, Gail.
You're welcome. You're just membrane contact, which is just body fluids, right? How can you prevent getting hepatitis? Just don't do any of those things I just said, right? Stay away from West. HIV. HIV is also a bloodborne pathogen. This organism works to destroy your immune system. So you can't fight off an opportunistic infection like pneumonia, common cold, even skin infection, right? The last and final phase of the HIV process is called AIDS. That's when you have no immune system. How do you get HIV? Exactly the same way as hepatitis B, right? So if you're at risk for one, you're at risk for the other, right? So in the healthcare setting again, most common way, needle sticks, blood, out in town, or at Wes's house, unprotected sex, sharing needles, right? Sorry, Wes. You're just so easy.
I know.
That's how you get it. Last thing I'm going to talk about is influenza. It's flu season again, right? Almost 40,000 people every year die of the flu. It's mostly the elderly, but you remember that one year we had the H1N1 and all the children died? H1N1 is still here, right? Can you get the flu from the flu vaccine? You cannot, okay? That's a myth. The most you're going to get is redness at the site, soreness, maybe some swelling, right? So I highly encourage you to get the flu shot. It's free to you here at Wendell Foster. How do you prevent it from getting the flu? And wash your hands. Simple, isn't it? I will be giving you the flu shot on
18th?
October 17th and 18th, starting at 6 a.m. So anybody who wants to come get that, please do so. I'll start early so I can catch the night shift and get everybody. Somebody might want to come and help me. We'll see.
What am I doing
So has anybody ever had the flu? Anybody? What does it feel like?
You're dying.
Yeah, like you're gonna die, right? It's awful. It's not a little hacking cough and a sneeze. It's debilitating. It's awful. You will not be able to come to work. So you won't be able to come to work with flu because you're not getting your head off the pillow. It's very bad. Okay, so I highly encourage you to get